We now recognize the Honorable Congressman Leandro Leviste. Go ahead, Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have to take to lunch some of my constituents who came to the House this morning. And you might have noticed them when you walked in. They are farmers, fisherfolk, and tricycle drivers from Batangas. And they are eagerly awaiting news if the House will approve any measure to lower taxes they pay, including the value-added tax. And I think the problem for many in the country now is it's now been 37 days into this crisis and there has yet to be any aid given for much of the country, especially for the most affected sectors like transport workers. And yet we are still paying value-added tax every day. So it would be, I think, a more effective solution if we focus on tax reduction when our government has proven to be a little slow in distributing aid to the most affected sectors. So I would like to first ask the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, ang pagbaba po ng VAT from 12 to 10%, sa tingin po ninyo, Chair, ito po ay posible o imposible?
Lahat ng bagay posible.
Lahat po ng bagay posible. And in my estimation, the majority of the members of this committee, if asked, will say they will vote in favor of this measure. Kaya nagtataka lang ako, bakit hindi pa ito naaaprubahan? Sino po, Chair, kaya ang ayaw na ibaba ang VAT?
Pwede natin tanungin later on yun, Congressman Lean.
Sa inyong estimation, Chair, dahil matagal na natin tinatalakay ito, sino ang may ayaw na ibaba ang VAT?
Sigurado ako ikaw ayaw na hindi ibaba.
Tama. Pero you personally, Chair, if speaking on your personal capacity.
Well, like I've always said, as chair of the committee, it is our anticipation always that we make the lives of our countrymen easier and better. That's always our core objective. The more progressive the tax is, the better, without putting in danger the fiscal or becoming fiscally irresponsible. Yun lang naman ang binabalanse natin parate. Wait, Len, are you asking me or are you asking the resource
I'm asking,
persons?
I think
go
because
ahead,
you are the more important person to
go
answer
ahead,
a question on
I
the
am
approval
deeply
of a
honored.
House measure.
I am deeply honored.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But actually, that's my next question, Mr. Chair, which is, if almost all of us in Congress support lowering the VAT, then I think we should just put it to a vote and let the public see who of the 318 members of Congress supports lowering the VAT from 12 to 10% or supports suspending the VAT on petroleum, and let every member's vote be publicly known. What do you think of that, Mr. Chair?
I support that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I think it is on the record that in the past hearings, the Department of Finance has expressed reservations on lowering the VAT. And there was a position paper submitted, if I'm not mistaken, on November 18, when the DOF said that it would result in increase of the deficit if there is no corresponding decrease in expenses. But there was a discussion that this could possibly be revised with new Secretary of Finance's appointment. May I ask the Undersecretary of Finance if the DOF plans to revise its position on lowering the VAT, or if it continues to disagree with the measure to lower the VAT?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to consult if we have resubmitted the position paper. I'll get back to you, sir.
So that we're not aware of any change in the position, so we can presume that the DOF is still against lowering the VAT from 12 to 10% for maybe reasons of fiscal responsibility. Would you agree, Undersecretary Adriano?
Mr. Chair, I'm just checking if we have submitted a new position paper, but I confirm that in our previous position paper, we mentioned that we have expressed reservation due to the fiscal implication.
And what is the DOF's position on suspending the VAT on petroleum products?
Mr. Chair, we don't have an official position paper on that yet, but we are studying that proposal.
Is it possible that we will suspend the VAT on petroleum products this year, or is that not currently the direction of the DOF?
Mr. Chair, that would be subject to for a discussion of the economic mandate.
There is currently no plan to suspend the VAT on petroleum products.
There is no recommendation yet to suspend.
May I ask the views on the matter by the Secretary of the Department of DepDev, Secretary Balisacan? Of course, we all know that lower taxes are good if the country can afford it, but the question, of course, is how can we manage the deficit? And I suppose logically we can either reduce expenses or increase other sources of revenue. Do you support, Mr. Secretary, lowering the VAT?
I support any tax reforms that improve the progressivity of the tax system. We have looked at the progressivity of lowering or suspending the VAT, and if your objective is to improve the welfare of the large majority of our poor, and you would want the incidence of the tax to be very, very favorable to the poor, then that is not the answer. So I think that you have to look at closely and who is bearing the cost, and then of course I will support lowering those taxes if you can identify, if Congress can also identify new sources of tax revenue, because the fact is, as we grow, there is a much more demand for public services, quality public services, better transport system, better, so we need more revenues. Of course, given that we can improve the governance for spending, but given that, we still have to think about raising revenues and raising it in a way that is progressive for our society. If you can identify revenues that achieve that objective, I am in favor of lowering taxes that burden our population.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate that it seems, Mr. Chair, DepDev is warm to the idea of lowering the VAT. I really then wonder who is behind not lowering the VAT? If even the good Secretary of DepDev
Mr. Chair,
seems to be in favor.
point of information.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, we're talking about finance. May I just know if the Secretary of Finance will be here?
May we ask Yusek Adriano, will the Secretary of Finance be coming this afternoon?
Mr. Chair, the Secretary actually sends his apology that he will not be able to attend the hearing today because I think he has a meeting in Malacanang today po.
Mr. Chair, napaka-importante po nitong ating pinag-uusapan at malaking bahagi ng solusyon kung mag-aaproba tayo ng bayanihan tungkol po sa finance. So baka pwedeng humabol. Kung sa Senate po, mahabol yung mga secretary, baka pwedeng humabol dito sa House.
Could you kindly inform the Secretary of Finance? We have not seen him actually here in the House, not once. Maybe it's high time for him to be present so we can hear from him personally. I'm sure he's extremely competent to be able to overcome all the questions that will be raised here.
Mr. Chair, we will relay the message.
Okay, thank you very much, Kong Egay.
Yes,
Please proceed, Leon.
And I'm thankful for any opportunity to discuss various matters further with DOF and DepDev. I did want to ask the Secretary's opinion on the possibility of an across-the-board cut on personnel services because in the Secretary's first time in NEDA, I'm sure the budget was much smaller and yet good work was produced. If I'm not mistaken, personnel services in the 2026 budget are now approaching 1.9 trillion pesos and yet used to be maybe around 1/3 of that. Would you say, Mr. Secretary, that it is possible to have an across-the-board cut on personnel services in government?
I don't think that across the board would be the proper formula because on the one hand, we see significant need for more teachers, for example. the education sector has a lot of problems, and
So if we are to remove education, health, other crucial government agencies, perhaps in some other agencies we
some
can
other,
have reduction in personnel services.
yeah, I believe so, that there are probably some agencies there that
Yes, because
we
I just
need
think that
more.
it's hard for the public to accept that we cannot lower taxes when we have yet to see any plan for how greater austerity measures can be imposed in light of the current economic crisis.
Mr. Chair, the current situation now is not just about the crisis. It's also about, even after the crisis, we have a debt debt that's quite huge, and much of that debt actually was carried over from the COVID crisis, and you have to serve that. You have to raise revenue for that, for the services. And then in addition, as we will try to catch up with our neighbors, there's so much that we have to do to make our industries more competitive, to make our people have access to better services, particularly connectivity, transport. You need revenues.
Yes, thank you,
How
Mr.
I
Chair.
wish that is the focus also of our discussion, how to raise more efficient, more progressive revenues, because by just focusing on reducing the taxes, then we'll miss a big picture. My fear, if I may say so, I express my view here, is that in our effort to respond to the needs of addressing the current crisis, we may be making it even more difficult, if you are not careful in the design of such response, to getting back to a better and future. And we have had such a long history of being in a crisis, and it took us so much longer to come back to it compared to the experiences of our neighbors. And that's because we mismanaged the fiscal, for example. We ended up with debt that's higher than necessary, and that led to a lot of problems: higher interest rates, higher inflation. And with that, the prospects for us to attract investments will be much dimmed. And if the future that we are seeing for next year is going to be like that, then we have done much more harm to the economy than we tried to do, to achieve for.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for highlighting the need for more progressive tax measures. If there is time for an extended discussion with the DOF, then it would be good to discuss this, whether later today or another day. But I do know that time is short now, and I did want to ask one last question.
Conglian, that is your last
Yes,
question, please.
a last
Go
question
ahead.
directed to the Bureau of Customs. Can you please expound on how much is lost to smuggling every year? And, well, if I can have a follow-up after you answer that.
Well, there are different data provided to the Bureau of Customs, Your Honor. I think the largest at one point is for fuel alone is about 40 billion pesos. That was before we implemented the fuel marking program that ensured that all tax-paid fuel are marked accordingly.
What about for all smuggling?
Well, UN trade data, Your Honor, in comparing it to the export values being declared by other countries varies. But I think on the average, it's about 60 to 100 billion a year. That was, but there were reconciliation already made by the Bureau, especially with China, which lowered that amount already.
Because I think we were discussing that it could actually be in the hundreds of billions, but maybe this could be the subject of another further inquiry on smuggling. But I just am trying to respond to the need to raise more revenues without further burdening the people, and in fact creating fiscal space for further tax decreases, if we could clamp down on smuggling at the Bureau of Customs. Because maybe our kababayans don't recognize that the reason we're paying 12% VAT is because maybe 1/3 of potential taxes are not being collected. If only they were collected, perhaps we could be paying only an 8% VAT. If we could clamp down somewhat, then perhaps we could afford to pay a 10% VAT. But according to your estimates, it's closer to 100 billion and not in the hundreds of billions.
Yes, Your Honor. That's on the latest data that being provided. And we welcome that suggestion, Your Honor. In fact,
Thank you.
one of the answers that we're looking for is the complete automation or digitalization of the Bureau. We're trying to wrap up the procurement of that particular endeavor within the year so we can implement it next year. That will answer to a lot of loopholes. And just to inform Your Honor, for your information, Your Honor, the Bureau of Customs for the first 3 months of the year, we've already hit, we're on track of hitting our targets. In fact, we're at a surplus of about 3 billion pesos.
Yes, my comment,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, is just
Thank you,
that I hope we
gentlemen.
can look for a way to make the revenues so that we can afford to lower the VAT rate or cut on expenses, because we can't just assert that the country cannot afford to lower the VAT, Mr. Chair, without showing that we've really exhausted efforts to lower expenses, even starting here in Congress and across government agencies, or impose more progressive taxes, as Secretary Balisacan has suggested. And if even after all of these discussions, there is still opposition to lowering the VAT, then perhaps we can identify who are those who are against it and put to a vote the matter so that the public will know who is really against lowering the VAT.